It's been a while since I've talked about the trillion-dollar infrastructure bill or the $1 to $3 trillion social spending bill that's languishing in Congress. I do think that this is going to be the most expensive $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed in a long time. But I see Joe Biden goes up and he's rallying the troops at Capitol Hill, laying out a framework that they can all agree upon. Conservative Democrats all the way through progressives in the House. Something that will pass the House and pass the Senate. Except, of course, the progressives are saying they will not vote on the infrastructure bill until they get this economic stimulus bill or economic building back better bill or whatever the hell it's called passed. Basically, the goodies have to come first and then the meat and potatoes come second. Now, where I'm from, in Iowa, I could lay you with some down-home wisdom about not eating your dessert first, but most of us here in Iowa over the age of 25, myself included, probably could afford to skip dessert a few times. So trying to use some down-home wisdom and apply it to our budget situation might produce unintended consequences. What I can say throughout all of this is the Republicans have been conspicuously silent. A few weeks ago, I mused about the idea of the Republicans proposing a negative $3.5 trillion stimulus or $3.5 trillion bill to counter the Democrats' $3.5 trillion bill. The compromise being between the two being zero, which I think to be the correct answer. Well, they haven't done that. What they have done is they've just put the rules in place, or at least enforced the rules, forced the Democrats to follow this arcane process of reconciliation and the arcane rules of filibuster. And then they've sat back and done nothing, and just kept quiet, apart from the occasional rhetorical bombs from people running for office. What I would say to the Democrats is this: when your opponent is silent, it's probably because you're doing a better job accomplishing what they want than they would do if they were actively engaging you. Do I think that the economic Building Back Better bill will pass? Something will pass. And then to get that passed, then we can pass the infrastructure bill, which has bipartisan support. But in looking at the things that they left out, free community college, which on its face sounds like a really free community college seems like a really good thing. It would allow people to get more education without incurring debt, and they would be getting education at institutions that are more reasonably priced than state universities. If you're going to get 2 years of college, you might as well pay community college prices for it, particularly if you're getting a degree in something that isn't terribly employable. But all government spending exacerbates our more serious problem of inflation, which I will talk about later. But when looking at how they plan to pay for the free preschool and all the climate stuff and some of the healthcare stuff, all of which sounds good on paper, you look at it, it's like, well, gee, this is good stuff. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Except, of course, much of it falls under the category of want-to-haves and not need-to-haves. And that is the, of course, definition of adulthood, where you suddenly discover that there are the things that you want to have are not necessarily the things that you need to have. But when looking at how this bill is going to be passed, I start to see some red flags. A mandatory 15% tax on corporate profits greater than $1 billion. To me, it seems like a great incentive to make sure that you never have more than $999 million worth of profit. 15% tax on international earnings. I'm not exactly sure what that means, other than it sounds like they're trying to get companies that are hiding money offshore, which, frankly, I don't see any problem with that. One of the things I thought was rather lousy, but it doesn't affect me, not yet, is the 5% surcharge on incomes greater than $10 million and a 3% surcharge on incomes greater than $25 million. Those are things that look good and make people feel good, but will raise very little money for two reasons. First, the people earning those salaries probably can restructure how they're compensated in such a way that they're not being paid more than $9.9 million in income, and then they are compensated some other way that doesn't get taxed. And the other thing that I just have to call bullshit on is anybody with that level of income probably can find loopholes to hide it, move it around, or flat out, like I said earlier, get compensated in a different manner, in a non-taxable manner. After all, the 15% surcharge on corporate, the 15% minimum tax, that isn't a reform of the tax system, that's a band-aid. The companies not paying any taxes aren't paying any taxes because they're using the existing system and are doing it better than the IRS is at enforcing their own system. So instead of reforming the system, instead of fixing the problem, they want to slap a 15% minimum tax on top of everything and say, well, if you manage to get through all the rest of this tax code, you're still hit with this 15% business. So you're still going to pay it. Well, if a company was that invested in navigating the tax code, don't you think they're going to figure out a way around your 15% surcharge on profits greater than $1 billion? Where I'm going with this is that all of these taxes on the super wealthy and the big corporations are gimmicks. And they're gimmicks that the big companies and rich people will sidestep. And, as is always the case, the burden of paying for this new spending will fall either on posterity in the form of new debt, or it will fall on the middle class and upper middle class taxpayers that have enough money to pay the taxes, but not enough money or clout to escape them.